Okay, we're recording.
All right, good afternoon. Welcome everyone to the October 21st, 2025 meeting of the Policy Subcommittee. I'll start by moving the minutes from September 9th, 2025. Thank you, Betsy, for writing those up. Do I have a second?
A second.
Thanks, Jesse. Mariah, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
Okay, and I vote yes. Um, Thank you, Bella, for joining us. I thought might have another meeting at 5. Do you have any constraints on when you can be present at this meeting?
He's muted.
You're muted.
Val is attending the other one. It's
Oh, okay. So
understood
you
that
don't
I'm
have to be there.
here and then she's there.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, then that might work out well because I believe at least part of your reason for being here today might be to provide us with any updates on the principal's views on building access. So Mariah asked that we move that agenda item up to be the first one. So let's start with that policy. So this is possible updates to section K of the policy manual. So Jesse, do you want to introduce your current draft, some of the background to this, and maybe how you envision this fitting into that section as it stands?
Sure, thanks. Hi, everyone. So Section K, as it currently exists in the policy manual, was last looked at somewhere between 2014 back to 1981. So besides there being terminologies in there that were somewhat old, the goal was to sort of take a new look at it regarding security, regarding how outside users approach our town facilities, which are the buildings. So some key input that we had gotten was from both after-school programs and enrichment programs about consistent and timely protocols for making reservations and being charged fees that allow them to operate and us to make the revenue and not to obviously go negative. The use of, and people, and there was a whole section of in the existing one about how the public should conduct themselves on school property. In taking a look at a draft of a new version, which I did send out, I think, to Betsy on Sunday, I took a sort of a little different view of it, and basically I wanted to immediately start by saying that the public schools of Brookline buildings are primarily for, of course, school, and that because of the size of the investment, though, in the square area of space that the schools represent within the town, that when possible and when available, done correctly, it should be available. Certain parts of the schools at least should be available to both families after school time, as well as to programs, whether they're school related or not school related, but under control of the superintendent and the Office of Administration and Finance. Again, some points that I made in the newer version was that the scope of all access and usage would be under the direct responsibility of the superintendent. That in general, their access time is for school only and things related to school, and then access and security need to be guaranteed. There's a issue that's come up over the last year and a half that I've been involved with, security after hours, so that enrichment and after school programs don't have to be taking their staff to meet people knocking at the door, or kids that are playing in the playground after hours and need to get to a bathroom or something like that. So the security measures part is another set. There's a section that respects the way the classrooms and facilities have to be used in a way that does not damage anything, and provides for methodologies for cleanup and supervision, handling things after hours, and then a large, not a large section, but a significant paragraph had to do with the after school programs. And so, as I mentioned just prior to the meeting started, last year that I had been approached by several of the after school programs to discuss the timing that we use to set up the contracts with these programs so that they can adequately prepare and market to the community. And then the cost structure, that there are concerns with some of the after school or enrichment programs about what facilities they're offered, how it's decided, whether it can be money even neutral for these programs, or whether they have to go to the parents in addition, to raise additional funds because of the way it's being charged, or that they feel in discussions with some of their other peer enrichment programs that they're handled differently in different schools because of historical reasons. The whole gamish of that was basically that it would be appropriate, I think, for us to ensure that we have standardized protocols, improved timing, so that we're contracting with the programs on a schedule that works for both them in particular, because they're providing the program, and of course with the schools. And then finally, a section about emergencies. I didn't look at this, Andy, as a way of specifically folding it into each and every paragraph of Section K, because again, that's 11 years old right now. But certainly we can take a look at doing it that way if that's the way the committee wants to do it. I'm happy to work on it that way as well.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have any particular vision in mind for that, because going through the existing Section K, I mean, there's some overlap with what you've provided here, and then there's quite a few things that are, that aren't addressed here. I don't know how much of that really needs to be addressed in policy. In general, of course, it would be great if we could slim down the policy and still have it do what's needed. But I don't think we've done that work yet of figuring out what in the existing section could go. Yeah, so anyway, thank you for providing this new draft. So I guess the changes since April that I noted in comparing the two. So you had added in Section 2 a sentence saying, while the superintendent is responsible for the broad strokes of this policy, the director of OAF and the director's staff shall work together with school and external building users to ensure consistency. So I think that's an important change, and maybe it's actually the main motivation for addressing this now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I think the other things I noted that were new was you added a sentence in Section 5 saying use of these special areas is contingent upon the scheduled party adhering to all rules associated with such areas. And you also added a sentence there on rental fee schedules being recommended by the superintendent and approved by the school committee.
Right.
And then the only other change I noticed was that you deleted the word promptly from oh no, actually did you add the word? No, it's still there. Okay, sorry, never mind.
Okay.
Nothing there.
You
moved it to a different part of the sentence. Yeah.
Right. I think the issue about the rental fee schedules again is that there's some lack of, I think, transparency about what the schedules are for the fees, when they have, how the contracts are set up. When I spoke to, like, for example, at Driscoll or at Hayes or at FRR, for example, the different folks gave me like different narratives about how it works or doesn't work smoothly for them. And especially because in some cases, this could be potentially a revenue opportunity for the school, for PSB. It's important that we, sort of get this properly codified and ensure that our machine is running smoothly, in terms of when the enrichment programs or after school programs are identifying that there's a need, how they reach either, Susan or Jose, or, that kind of
Yes.
oh, sorry. Yeah, just who they reach out to. That should be, there's a little bit of that in the original policy. Maybe we can fold those two together in that area, so that is just a very clear set of protocols about how to set it up and how the actual fees are to be set. An example would be: is it per head or is it per room? In other words, if I have 100 students, am I paying 100 times some unit price? What if I need to use a certain room? Is a multi-purpose room or some other room more expensive? And if so, in some of the cases, it prices them out. I mean, it's just no way to do it. So, or if there are other programs that come in and rent a room for an outside thing. I don't know if Booksmith is doing something in the school and they pay for a rental, yet a enrichment program is paying every day during a different set of hours, but they're paying differently. So all that stuff needs to be because people talk. I think just needs to be in black and white so that like the school committee is clear, superintendent's clear, and the community is clear on how we're handling access to the buildings.
Yeah. So Mariah, you probably have more experience than any of the rest of us in trying to mediate the building usage with these other programs. So how does this seem to you?
Well, I think, Jesse, you're saying things which um, I think reflect that you are new to the committee, so you haven't lived through fee setting on buildings. We have all the documents published that define the different rates and the different setting for the different programs because they operate differently. Some of them are running once, like an hour, once a, month, and some of things are running every day for 4 hours a day. So there's absolutely stuff published on all of the fees. And but I think that what you're also alluding to is, for example, some quote unquote enrichment programs are standalone. Some programs are run by PTOs. We have all of that accounted for in the documentation. I guess my question is this policy meant to address the fees? Because the issues you're mentioning don't necessarily seem to be covered in this policy. Like the scheduling questions is one thing. The rental fees, which you're saying is an issue, is, as you say, it's a different document that we have worked with. So I guess I'm not really clear, like, what are we trying to do relating to the fees there? Just so I understand.
Would it be appropriate that the fees are available through the policy, or should they be linked somewhere else so that they're
They should be linked somewhere else because the policy is meant to be basically static unless you want to have to revise the policy every year. It
well,
doesn't make sense to the policy incorporate the fees.
right,
In
but
the same way that we vote all the other fees separately every year. We don't have any of our fees baked into policy. They're all separate.
the existing policy doesn't refer to any documentation. So maybe that would be an improvement if we were to do what you said, to link to where they really are so that we can so that the policy takes the person reading the policy or wanting to do a program to where that information is.
Well, I think they should talk to the director of operations or the deputy for admin and finance, which is those are the, I think you did allude to,
Yes,
these are the person or the
yep,
people who are responsible for that.
sure.
I
So,
have,
so Betsy has scrolled to schedule of fees. The DSAF shall develop and maintain a fee schedule and payment process for community use. It's mentioned in the current
Yeah,
section.
but I mean, like in discussing things with parents and different, after school programs, it's like helter skelter. That's what that's sort of
I
the
think, Jesse, you need to differentiate between there's a couple of things going on, and I think you're taking, like, that parable about the different blind men looking at the
on the
elephant. One
elephant,
says
yeah,
it's a
people,
snake,
yeah,
and one says, right, you're talking to people who have certain, like, limited narrow windows into the system, as opposed to I don't know if you actually talked to Susan or to Joe or anyone who's actually running the system, but let me give a little bit of background, which is Matt Gillis was here and then left to go to a different school system. And then we had a year without a director of operations. And then Joe came in, and we're now in the beginning of Joe's second year, the very start of Joe's second year.
right,
And so when Joe came in, a lot of the systems that one would like to see around contracting and everything else were not necessarily in place. And so Joe was going to take his first year to live it so that we could have recommendations be made this year for how things should run. So, for example, how should contracting run? How should booking run? All of those kinds of details of what you're alluding to. Now, people who use the system in and out, they have much more familiarity with who they need to talk to and so on. And I'm pretty sure that the people who you're talking to are people who are frequent flyers and know that. They're reflecting, though, the fact that we had a different person in charge before, and maybe the systems weren't what they needed to be, and then we had a gap, and then we have a new person. So I wouldn't, like, my sort of takeaway from this is, let's let Joe, there's Joe getting himself up to speed on the systems he needs. And we shouldn't be throwing the baby out with the bathwater and sort of saying, well, there's no systems or anything. It's that Joe has literally said to us last spring, please let, or even last fall, please let me get the time to see how this works so I can make recommendations for how this is going to work.
When are we gonna get those recommendations?
We'll have to follow up with him. This is the first conversation that we're having regarding this topic. And so we need to have, like, this was the point, was starting this fall, we would have those conversations.
So maybe what we should do is put this aside for a second and schedule that time with him, possibly with Susan as well. That'll provide some additional meat for the bones here so that we have those sections sort of captured based on his experiences first year.
Well, I
And-
guess my question though, Jesse, is like, his side is operations. To me, this is policy. So like things like security measures, all exterior doors will remain locked during school hours with access controlled. Is that policy, or are we essentially defining procedure in this policy document? Because I think that there's a blend here, and I'm not sure that's what I was trying to say, is what is this document uh trying to do? Are we trying to talk about like locking doors? Are we trying to say, for example, are things sort of like philosophically about how we want the building, whether or not we want the building to be available after school or outside of school hours? And, you know, if we have any sort of priorities as to who gets access, or like those sorts of questions to me seem like more appropriate rather than wading into the details of exactly how our buildings are going to be maintained secure.
Well, I guess in the same way that the existing policy involves like provision of certification of query checks on all program staff, certification of liability coverage, copies of state licenses, that's pretty detailed stuff as well, rather than just saying follow, or that we don't discriminate based on, you know, color, religion, origin, gender.
Sure, well, I'm not sure that, I'm not saying that the current policy is good either. I'm saying,
Right.
do we actually want, not like, what does the current policy have?
I think where I was trying to proceed was to discuss the philosophy of the way that the public schools of Brookline welcomes use of its buildings outside of school hours, and that what framework we want to put around that.
When we talked about building fees, some of the things we talked about, we essentially enshrined in the fees, but we don't have a policy that supports. And I'll give you an example. One of them is that we don't charge PTOs for space because PTOs their funding is returning fully to that school. We don't charge them for space because that's essentially just deducting the funds that they're going to give back to the school anyway. But that's something that we put into the fee schedule, which is not reflected in policy. So things like that, sort of our philosophy about who we want to be able to use the building, when and at what cost, I think might be very valuable in the policy. The other thing that we've been talking about with recreation is that they have a first, it's not complete, but this idea of having a first right of refusal for some of the spaces after hours. And so how we talk about, for example, PTOs and recs, because the other thing that I think that those uses, which are at zero cost, they go, you know, there's this tension between revenue generation and who we want to be able to use the buildings at no cost. And I think that if the school committee could articulate sort of what we want in that domain, that would be very helpful to help everyone understand what we're trying to do and why our revenue generation may be limited given the priorities that we're making. You know, for example, we might choose to offer the space to the Brookline Senior Center at zero cost, some space. That's great. And so, you know, how do we need to talk about why we're doing that though, right? Because I
Right.
think especially as we're going into this override year, those kinds of like philosophical decisions are important for us to articulate as opposed to some of the more operational procedural aspects.
And
I agree.
Mariah, as someone who has worked on the fiscal policy quite a bit, I mean, does this resemble that in the sense that there's this whole area of our operations where like a lot of practices have grown up over time. Some are, you know, and a lot of institutional knowledge goes away when people leave,
Yeah.
but there's sort of a way things are done. And then there's this question of what's worth codifying and what's better left to individual judgment, right? And then also what's worth elevating the policy in particular. Yeah, I mean, so all the questions you're raising seem to arise there as well, but we somehow managed to get a policy underway. So I don't want us to be paralyzed here by
I
the
think
sense that
that
well, a lot of people know a lot of things, but where
I
do
don't
we
think
wade
it's about
in?
knowing a lot of things, Andy. I think that like they should be writing down their procedures,
Hmm.
procedure, like an SOP manual or whatever it is, how they track things. There's just a difference in how they operationalize that and how they might make modifications to their operations routinely, which is very different from our policy manual, right? If this isn't updated for 5 years, will that be a problem, right? I mean, questions. There's a lot of stuff here that's very detailed. So I would like us to not overstep on whether it's at the building level or at the district level in terms of operations, which I agree with you, Andy, there should be documentation. That's not saying that documentation doesn't have to live in our policy manual. We can say things
Right.
like the superintendent should direct her staff to create appropriate SOPs relating to security.
I mean, the community interest here is just so that people who might wish to use our buildings like know where to turn, have some sense of the principles that they're going to encounter when they negotiate with us, right?
Yeah.
So how best to achieve that, I'm not sure. Bella, you have your hand up.
I just, I am a little, so thank you, Jesse, for the draft. I'm looking at the current policy and it's actually quite clear on scheduling and fees. It does say that administrative guidelines should be created for the use of school buildings. I have to say, I don't know if such a guide exists or not. Maybe it does exist. But that is more typical of a policy sort of outlining there shall be fees. The administration has to produce the schedule. There should be guidance on use of school buildings. And so the administration is supposed to have created them. And again, I don't know if they exist or not. It's just because I'm new. Um, if if you're concerned about what the rules are, then I think school committee can ask for a review of the guidelines, right, of the building use. But to be prescriptive about generally, like a policy won't say you have to lock the doors. I don't know, it'll ask for development of safety protocols that should exist, and it may be embodied in these guidelines for use of school buildings. But Jesse, there must be something you thought wasn't being addressed by the current policy that you felt you needed to draft it. I wasn't sure if you were suggesting this should replace the one that's there.
I think it's probably gonna be better if I try to merge the two together. Yeah,
Okay, so you must think there's some things in here that yeah, aren't being met. Okay. It it did seem pretty comprehensive. I guess so again, I was just wondering, oh, so like embedded in your draft,
Mhm.
I see it says security cameras may be installed. Um,
That's a policy statement, that's.
yeah, you might, so I wonder, so the current policy covers fees and general uses and stuff, but maybe you're looking for like a security policy, like safety and security policy, a standalone, uh, or
I'm not sure that really exists, so.
well, I'm wondering if that's what you're looking for as opposed to in putting it into this.
Yeah, the other thing is, if one takes a look at section K on the MASC site where they have, district after district after district, the community use of school facilities section is like 1/10 the length of our Brookline one right now. It's like 5 sentences, kind of thing.
Mhm.
And it's very, 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 very high level. Leaves a lot, I think, the last reviewed in 2022, and it leaves a lot to wonder about, like, where does everything else happen, right? And if it's not in the policy, how do you find anything? So to me, it seemed very, that's filed KF, very, very thin, Bella. So I felt it was important that we put a little more, meat on the bones again about other than, saying that the use of the buildings by any organization will be permitted only when a worthy cause will be served or a substantial group of citizens from the community will be benefited. And then to say school facilities will be used according to the regulations and rental fee schedules recommended by the superintendent and approved by the school committee, to me, says very little. It's a one-line thing. If I want to know anything about that, I got to start trying to, work my way in somewhere to find out is it up to date? Is it the same as everyone else's? There's a lot of unknowns in there. So it's so high level as to be not very useful in my opinion.
Okay. So I'm just so I'm unclear how you want to integrate this, or it sounds like you might want to just try to integrate it to the current.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that might be
Yeah.
the next
Okay.
one.
Andy, if I might just make one more comment.
Sure. And then Mariah.
Okay, just when you were talking about, when the group was talking about who gets to use building space for free, I just wanted to remind everyone, there's also STS. They're another group that gets to use school space without a fee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, which one?
Steps to success.
Yeah, and for after-school programming.
Who takes care of like building maintenance in those situations? Cleaning, whatever, going through afterwards and getting everything ready for the next day of school.
Right, so that's a good point. So when we allow building use after school by other, it makes it's wear and tear in the building, and of course it makes it harder for custodial staff to clean those areas in time for tomorrow. It's just part of the understanding. So you don't, just because you have this is something to keep in mind when scheduling the spaces for use for other uses besides the school, but no different than for anything, Jesse, when we allow the building to be used, yes. And so the fee is supposed to cover that, but there's some things like Mariah mentioned, PTO, STS is another, are groups that we don't charge.
Okay.
Partly because we're recognizing their mission, their charter. PTO is all about supporting the school.
Sure.
It's all volunteers. And STS supports our students that are in that live in the housing authority, but also students are eligible for participation in STS that are of a certain socioeconomic status,
Right.
that they also have that.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
as part of their charter, we're recognizing they're clearly not for profit.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think Andy, maybe the next step with this one would be for me to take it back based on the input that was shared here, and provide a draft maybe for our next meeting, even, in other words, I'll try to do this in due time rather than by the spring. Try to do it for our next meeting so that we can look at it another time.
I wonder whether before you do all that work of putting together a new draft, we should at least check in with the staff member who has to live with this policy and figure out, in his, I guess, 1 year of experience so far, are there areas where he might have wished that the policy were more explicit? Are there areas where he's found the current policy helpful or unhelpful in various ways, just so we get a sense of that? Because I do think that we have some understanding of what the community might need from the policy, which is, just to have some predictability and understand kind of who they need to talk to and some general guidelines. I'm less clear on what staff would need out of a policy.
And beyond Joe, it's also the principals and the people who are in the like the building leaders, and also the people who are working in the buildings after school.
Yeah, because I don't think this was an area where we were approached by staff saying, oh, there are these gray areas and we would really need some guidance in order to be able to, point to this when we're working with folks in the community. I haven't heard that for this policy, which and that is often how, our policy work originates. So,
Yeah, one of the things that did come up at the PTO meeting where I represented the school committee at Ridley, would be 2 weeks ago or something, was about building access after school is out, meaning that in that particular case at FRR, a large number of middle school students stay after school to play outside. And if any of the kids need to use the bathroom, the doors are locked and they have to knock on the door until someone, comes over to help, let a kid go in to use the bathroom. And we also discussed things like if you forgot your backpack, whatever, but let's just use the bathroom case. So there were parents who volunteered, in the ensuing discussion after I spoke about it for a minute or two. They said, well, we could have a rotating schedule where a certain parent who's there every afternoon takes an hour and they're going to be sitting by the door and they'll make sure that they're checking who's coming in and coming out. And I said, well, we'll need more discussion about that because I'm not going to say from the school committee perspective, of course, without talking to the superintendent or anyone else or Jose about whether that's, the security approach you want to take after hours is having parents, more or less, hopefully not too distracted, deciding who comes in and out of the building after school is finished. And at the same time, we don't want the doors propped open. And yet kids who are spending a lot of their hours after school playing with their friends, if they need to use a bathroom, do we need a security guard there to let them in? How's that supposed to work? So I discussed it with them and said, needs more work. We're working on a policy and, sort of hope to get back to you, in 1 or 2 PTO meetings from then about how far, where we're going to develop this so that there is some kind of support for that. And I imagine, at Hayes, I see the same thing. It's in my neighborhood. I see kids playing after school at Runkle in my neighborhood. So it's not only a Ridley thing. And so this is something not on the usage side as much, but really on just how do we what's our policy for providing access to our kids, our students after school's over in terms of just access to the building after the end of the official school day. Just another piece of it, Andy.
okay. Mariah, you've had your hand up for a while.
So this is exactly what I had my hand up about, which is that the policy, the after hours access and specifically after school use, I think we have this challenge, and it's not just like, for example, students who want to use the bathroom, which I think is an edge case that could fall in either direction about whether we want to let people into the building like loosey-goosey after school. But things like renting the basketball court after school, or not even AAU renting the basketball court after school, and then the coach shows up and it's 6 p.m. and no one is necessarily there to let them in. So what our systems or what the school committee expects of buildings, I think we need to sort of have this moment where we say, well, if we're going to rent buildings until 8 p.m., who is the party who's responsible for making sure that person so and so, like whoever it is who's the responsible person, has the ability to get into the building, right? And the other issue I think we have is that, for example, extended days are not employees of Brookline Public Schools, and they're being asked to, for example, let in, like answer the doorbell and let in people, and that's not their job, and they can't be responsible for that. And they shouldn't have to, that should not be something that they're being asked to do. So I think we have this gap still between specifically in this area of like, what does it mean? And to have, once the front office staff is gone, and even sometimes once the extended days are over, we still have building use. So who is, right, who is sort of controlling access to the buildings? And I think we have a problem, especially because multiple of the buildings are not designed where, for example, to access the gym, it's not like we have one, like there's not like an external door which can be left open to just access the gym. Essentially, you have to be let in the front door, and that opens up everything. So our buildings aren't designed for this, and there's a problem. So I do think that the policy could sort of really help articulate what our expectations are, because there's budgetary implications of, you know, being able to have a building open late. And I don't think because we haven't provided any money for this in the same way, like, I don't necessarily think we're managing it the way it should be. But I do agree with you, Andy, there should be something that's talked about with Joe. And if Bella has already gotten input from the principals about this, like, it would be helpful to hear that too. To really make sure that the policy is where the staff are having their needs met, the school committee is making sure our priorities are clear, and then the community understands who they need to go to.
So what would be the most efficient way of checking in with the director of operations and with building leaders about sort of what, you know, whether the current policy is meeting their needs, if there are gaps or unclarities, like whether those are the kind that can be addressed by policy or not?
But did Bella talk to them or no?
I did, but this
Mhm.
is I don't think I wasn't aware this draft existed until just recently. And so I didn't ask them about this. I asked them about something very specific.
Mhm.
Um, I do worry about after school access that's sort of random, like you're describing. There's You'd like to think that it wouldn't happen, but there is when there can be a lot of damage done to student work that's on the walls, um, just moving around things, and also soiling areas that have just been cleaned in preparation for the next day. It's it's when you allow after school use to a group, that's a little different because you know they're responsible for the area, but I'm a little wary of just opening up access so they can access the bathrooms, though I understand that's like a practical need, but to open the school up for that, I I don't know. It's sort of just concerning about maintaining security of the space. Um, but this is not something I talked to them about. I talked to them about something more specific.
Yeah.
I,
So before we leave this policy for the moment, Bella, do you mind saying what they told you? So think the thing you were going to check in with them about was specifically
About,
caregiver
yeah,
access at pickup and drop off.
yes, that's what I talked to them about. And if I'm happy to go back to them to talk about other things, but I'm not, I would need more clarity about what it is I'm asking, other than does the policy as it exists affect you either way? They're probably not going to be able to respond.
Mhm.
Because I don't think it's been an issue for them. But if there's a new policy there, then I can run that by them. Anyway, on the question of whether allowing access by caregivers, that language before, during, and after drop off and pickup that does not interfere with the safety or operation of the building, that draft language. Yes, Sandy?
Yes.
Yes. So I believe it was something that they addressed in the spring. So they were familiar with the language, and they pretty had a uniform response to this. They do have they say every single one. I asked every single principal at the K-8. They have drop off outside the building, and they have pickup outside the building. There's no difference among the schools. There is some difference depending for the preschool program. If they're housed in a school, they adhere to the school rule. If they're not housed in a school, but definitely that in that case, parents may walk their children more to the classroom. But otherwise, if they're in a school, they adhere to the school rule, which is pick up and drop off are all outside the school.
what about pickup from after school programs?
From after school programs,
Like extended day?
yeah, that I don't know.
Because
You-
I know, I know
Yeah,
from,
that I don't know, right?
I know from personal experience of picking up my grandkids,
From an after
You're-
school program may be different.
yeah, because you have to go in to sign
Yeah.
them. You have to go in to
Sure.
sign them out, and you have to go to the room.
Yeah.
This is when they were younger, obviously.
Right. That's a good point, Jesse. I only asked for a regular drop off and pickup. They did say too, like when they had affected a more uniform policy across the schools, the teachers report having more time on learning because they're able to have a more uniform start end to end. They were not in favor of a policy that would allow caregivers access to the building, to come in at pickup or at drop off.
That's interesting. Okay, things must have changed because in my visits to schools, a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, um, um, between 10 of 8 and like 2 minutes to 8, there were quite a lot of young parents with young kids dropping those young kids off at the door of their classroom and then parents leaving.
Well,
So,
that's interesting. That's not what they're reporting, that what they allow.
okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
but I can check. I know which school you're at, so I'll ask again.
One of the things that we have heard is, for example, whether or not that is the policy, some schools like Driscoll has this activity where once a week, a classroom, I think they call it like the classroom leads an open house or something. They have something that they do, and all of the classes in the grade are invited to come. All the caregivers of the classes in the grade are invited to participate. And that seems like a way to invite in a controlled manner the
Sure.
caregivers into the life of the school. At other schools, you may only enter the school, for example, during open house in the fall and never come back during the school day for the rest of the year, except perhaps you might have like a classroom breakfast or something like that. And so I think that if there was a way to look at what some of those practices are that are happening in some schools so as to increase the controlled access as opposed to uncontrolled access, but controlled access and participation in life of the school, I think that would be quite valuable.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, from a policy perspective versus what's actually done, Bella, in my experience, um, some schools have a table when you come in, after they buzz you in, and you really have to sign in and potentially even getting a sticker to put on your shirt that you're a visitor. Other schools, nothing. They'll buzz you in, and after that, you can walk to wherever you want to go. There's nobody, no adult asking you to sign in. There's no notebook for you to sign in. No one stops you to say, can you please stop in the office and sign your name? So it just could be that, we know what the policy is, but how well, as I think Mariah mentioned, how well how well these things are actually implemented and practiced on a daily basis may be different.
Well, there is no policy, right? And nowhere in our policy does it say caregivers do not have access to the building at pickup and drop off. The practice grew up during the pandemic and then was codified in a memo from Jim Marini.
A memo, an
Yeah.
email that was flung against the wall on the last Friday that was the last day of school.
And that's been the practice ever since. And as far as I can tell, the building leaders are happy with that practice. I can also, as a teacher myself, understand why most educators would probably be happy with that practice. So, and that's the way it stayed.
And I can understand that too, and I appreciate that. And I think that there's an opportunity here as educators appreciate that the community feels less engaged with our schools, and there's short-term and long-term drawbacks to that.
Yeah,
On
I just
both
think trying to
sides.
reverse this practice by writing a policy to address it would not go down well, and that's my view.
I will say again too that the teachers are reporting more time on learning. Like they just know they can start and they can end, as opposed to a fuzzy start. And you can imagine like some classrooms had a fuzzy start versus another class that starts on time, can can erode sort of that equitable experience across the classrooms over time.
Sure, but again, how can we foster more opportunities for engagement, so that
Sure.
people feel a little bit more of that life of the school that they do not feel the way they used to, right? So the
Okay.
pendulum doesn't need to go all the way to where it is right now.
I thought that idea that you have, what you said, that Driscoll does, a regular activity, that's more like this is the time you can come in. I mean, we can
Yeah.
talk about it.
So before
So-
we leave this policy for the moment, I'm not like I don't think that going to the building leaders about the after school access is something we need to do right now. But is there a quick way to check in with at least the director of operations just to find out, like, does he ever even refer to the current policy? You know, are there are there times when he
That's set up.
wishes?
Do you ever look at it, Joe?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
you know, it's fine if he doesn't, but like, you know, does he ever have occasion to refer to it? Are there unclarities there? Like, you know, does he think it needs to be rewritten from where he sits, right? And after a year of experience in actually managing this.
I didn't. Definitely should. Yeah, absolutely.
Andy, I actually disagree with you too. I think the building leaders live this in a very, very intimate way. And so they really are quite experienced and understand the challenges and where the policy might help bring clarity to the process or might provide additional needed guidance.
For after school and enrichment, you mean?
Correct, because that's their building. They're overseeing that building. And certainly they have quite a lot of them might be the last person in the building. They might be the one answering the door after hours.
Right.
There's a
I
lot that
mean,
they do.
Joe's important because it's the cleanup, and
Yeah.
sometimes things aren't left the way they there's repair. In fact, during the summer, they have things that are broken.
Well, I mean, that should
So
be
I think
policies.
that's how I read Andy's comment was there more that could be done in the policy?
Well, I just heard Andy saying, I don't think we need to consult them, and I think that we would
No, I said that
benefit.
at this
Oh,
moment,
oh,
I don't think that's the highest priority given how many there are and that they've already just been asked about this policy in a different aspect. Like, I think I would like to have some understanding of like Joe's thinking on this because he's sort of the central person here.
So I guess the plan there, Andy, is to get some feedback from Joe. And then based on that, to potentially have me sort of maybe do another draft with a closer merge, as Bella had suggested, maybe between the existing one and this.
Potentially, if there are parts of the existing one that are, you know, a dead letter or not necessary or even should be changed, right? Then
Sure. Okay.
with that. So Bella, would it be convenient to check in with Joe about this
Sure.
and just see whether he has thoughts?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Well, so thanks for that discussion. So we're now almost 50 minutes into our 90-minute meeting and two more policies left to discuss. And new business, I expect, would take 5 to 10 minutes because there is some just discussing, you know, upcoming activity. So yeah, Mariah, do you want to
Sure.
discuss? I guess the first one will be the section J on class size and sectioning.
That's not what I have pulled up, so it won't be.
Oh, what do you have pulled? What do you have pulled
It'll
up?
be the
I
pledge.
have the other one. I'm just trying to
Pledge.
open up my,
I'm still here and just turning my camera off while
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Bella, for joining us.
here we go. So you can see this is the flag, the Pledge of Allegiance. So most of it, there's 2 pages here. Most of it doesn't change. The only edits here on the first page were just to refresh that it's now called Select Board instead of Board of Selectmen. So that is very minor.
Yeah.
And then this was just it looked like a hanging sentence. Like the Pledge of Allegiance will be preceded with the following statement. But then there was no statement, so I think I just cleaned that up. And then
Did there used
this,
to be? Or is it?
no, I don't think so. I'm just
Oh, you
looking at
think
this.
it's-
It looks like it might just be dead language. I'm not sure. So
Oh.
then the non-coercive environment. And so I updated this wording about like, because it used to be respect for human differences, we had modified it. And then it says the Pledge of Allegiance will be preceded with the following, this is the part I added, or a substantially similar statement by the principal, head of school, or their designee. We will next recite the Pledge of Allegiance. In our community of many nationalities and beliefs, we recognize that the United States Pledge of Allegiance is less meaningful for some community members. Reciting the pledge is not required. A respectful silence is expected from everyone who chooses not to participate. And that's the only edit. In rereading this now, so I wrote this a long time ago. In rereading this now, I think I don't necessarily love
Um,
this
yeah,
sentence that I'm
I
highlighting here, and I don't think it's necessary. Can you see what I'm highlighting?
yeah, I agree. I
Yeah.
was just
Yeah.
I was actually
So I
just
think it would just
keeping
say, we'll
everything
read
as
next
though removing
recite,
it.
and
Yeah.
then reciting the pledge is not required. A respectful silence is expected from someone. That would be my only edit to this. And then it's just so that like it's affirmed that like we will do this, but it's not required, and that you're expected to be quiet, and then that's it.
well, how does that reflect? I mean, that seems to be repetitive with the first sentence in black after the red part.
Because that is this is what is said out loud to them. They were at the statement, this is what's read aloud. The principal says, we will next recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Um, you're right that this is repetitive, but it's not asking them to read this bit aloud. This is the part that they would say aloud. And we can delete this sentence if you like, because it's in the statement. That's fine too.
Yes.
Okay. Um,
So why did this not advance? Because it was last taken up in January of 2024.
I don't think we actually took it up. I'm not sure we actually ever took this up. I remember sending it to David, and I'm not sure it ever went to policy.
Ah,
Yeah. I don't, like I said, like, I want to do this. Betsy, do you remember? I remember sending it, David, but I don't think it actually got anything happened with it. Maybe Betsy's not there.
okay.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so it's a very small edit. I agree with, we can delete out this sentence, and I would delete out that middle sentence, and that's it.
Sorry, I was muted there.
Oh,
I will find my notes. Can you give me 1 sec? It was
Sure.
before policy in January of 24. So if you give me 1 sec, I'll find the notes we took that day.
okay.
So at the bottom of that document, in the last paragraph, Maria.
Yeah, sorry, let me pull it up.
Thank you.
Yes.
No, it's still black. What does it mean? The capital Brookline learning expectations, is that an old concept from somewhere else? Like Brookline learning expectations in capital letters. I don't know what that refers to. Is that something from an old strategic plan or something? Or
My recollection, but Bella, you should correct me, is there used to be separate learning, like we used to have separate learning objectives for each grade, and the state has now promoted grade-wide learning objectives. And so that
Right.
superseded the documents we used to have as a district.
and
Does
is
that sound right
BSC
to you, Bella? That,
I'll tell you, I'm not. You mean as part of the curriculum guides?
yeah, there used to be really
Yeah.
specific, right? Now it's pushed up to the state level, right? That they're statewide curriculum sort of learning objectives and such.
They always would have been part of the curriculum guides, yes. That would, and then they're the basis for the MCAS. Is that what you mean?
I was just asking Bella where it says Brookline learning expectations. That phrase is like coming out of nowhere to me. So I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, it does look
We
like
can-
it's coming out of nowhere.
If we could just say that supports curricular objectives, and that's
Yeah.
it.
That makes
Sure.
sense to me.
Okay, I'm happy to,
And then and BSC at the beginning is for Brookline School Committee.
yeah.
So Mariah, you're correct. It was a very brief discussion at the January 22nd, 2024 Policy Subcommittee meeting. It was referenced that there was additional language in the non-coercive environment section, so that it's clear that the pledge is an important civic tradition, but acknowledges that it is not required to be recited. It was agreed that Dr. Guillory will be asked to discuss this draft policy with school leaders for their feedback. So that was the last I could find in terms of official work on it.
And I don't think that ever happened.
I don't think so, because I think that would have prompted it to come back, so.
Right.
I mean, it didn't happen between May 24 and after I joined. I never heard of it. I heard of it only the first time, Mariah, from you when you mentioned you were going to bring it up.
So I'm a little confused actually as to what the policy is even requiring. So it says a PSB principal or head of school shall allow a member of the school community an opportunity to recite the pledge once a week. So are principals being required to allow recitation, meaning like, you know, like we'll get a student or a staff member to recite it, and the only thing that's not required is that like everybody join in. Oh, so it is required that the pledge be recited by like one person in the school. It's just not everybody has to participate.
Well, that's the
So-
other thing about the last paragraph where it said in the pedagogical section, I was a little concerned about where it talks about debates about compulsory recitation. We've already covered that in an earlier part of it. And it seems to me, since Pledge of Allegiance doesn't even appear in the MASC policy manual at all, for any school district, that this seems like a one-off at Brookline maybe, or something like that, where at some point it was a practice and there was a policy written around it. And at least to my knowledge, I've never heard from any principal or student I've talked to in years that it's ever been done. So
it's now done quite, it has been resurrected. So, a couple of years ago, it was not being done for quite some time routinely. Like it was sort of just at the building leader's discretion whether or not it was done. And there were some inquiries made about our compliance with our own policy. And Linus asked the building principals to confirm that they were adhering to the policy. And now my recollections is it happens maybe every Monday morning. Is that right, Bella? Do you remember? Is it every Monday morning?
I'm so sorry. I was reading text from Val. Go ahead. Ask me again. And she's on the screen here.
Yeah,
But,
just about when the Pledge of Allegiance, is it Monday mornings it happens? Do you remember?
I actually don't know that. I am so
Okay.
sorry.
It'd be
Okay, so this
interesting.
policy is currently being read as requiring that the Pledge of Allegiance occur in the school. It's just that students can opt out of actually saying it while it's being broadcast
Right.
over the intercom.
I guess while you're asking Bella, the superintendents, about anything with the building access thing, I'd be just curious if and how often any schools are doing it. Not to my knowledge, have I ever heard from any parent in years that at any school when asking that it's been done. It could be done.
I was in Lawrence last year and listened to it myself on a
Amazing.
Monday morning, so I know
Amazing.
it's happening and
all my other visits to schools in the mornings, I've never.
but again, it's once a week,
Fortunate
so you
enough.
might not have been there a Monday morning or whenever it is.
Yeah, okay. It'd be good to know. It'd be good to know what the current practice is, Yeah, that's good, Mariah. No, I'm just
Yeah.
curious. Thank you.
Anyway, does it make sense for next steps for this one that I will clean up those small edits and then send it to Betsy and Andy and you can send it to Bella and she can run it by the building leaders and make sure everyone's okay with that? That would be the,
Yeah, before going to a first reading at full school committee.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Then the next one that we were going to talk about
Was it class size?
yeah, the class size document. Betsy, do you have that handy?
Yes, I
was just-
do. Yep.
Okay, so you'll pull it up.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So it's in this section J. What you were really adding was here at the end on, let me get there.
Yeah.
Class
Just
size
that
and
one
sectioning,
section.
and then you made some other cleanup edits when you looked at it.
Yeah,
And
so
my
before we
recollection is
focus on
that-
this last section, like there are quite a few changes earlier in
Hold on, but hold on.
A2.
What I was gonna say is
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure all of the other cleanups, didn't they already get voted? Betsy?
No,
Oh, they didn't? I
No.
thought we had done all of them. Like everything except this, because I thought we were trying to clean up the mess about districts versus.
I remember that, but no,
Okay. Okay.
So are these your changes now, Mariah?
Yeah, so yes, they are.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand where this came from.
Yeah. Okay, so do we want to go back up to the top then and review them all? I think most of them, so I just changed the he, she to they everywhere. And then the second bit J2B because PSB is a school district, not the school department. And then there's a lot of like complicated wording here. So E was about like codifying current practice because a lot of people want to have their kid come in like when they're maybe like say you are your birthday is in September and then they want to get accepted into kindergarten even though they're a September birthday, and this sort of codifies how you're allowed to enter, what you have to do to get into grade 1 if you've done your kindergarten somewhere else.
Yeah, was this based on input from Megan?
Yes. Well, I can't remember if it
So
was
it was,
Megan or
Mhm.
Susan or Megan via Susan, but it was
Okay.
like through that pathway of, yes.
Okay. And it was felt by them to be useful to sort of codify it in this way rather than just relying on sort of them knowing what our practice is.
My recollection was that specifically they wanted it to be, this is a while ago, but my recollection was they wanted it to be in policy to sort of help them like be able to point to something. But that is,
Yeah.
it's a while ago, so I'm like recalling that
Yeah.
now. Then the section 3 wording was really just updating like head of school, teaching and learning. And then I think I deleted out the high school parents because I just consolidated it all into the, it's the same thing. It's basically just, it had originally elementary and high school. I just rolled it into one thing. And then I deleted out like elementary school and high school. So that's for JB2, same thing.
Hmm.
Um,
Actually, if I could pull us back, so my notes from January 22nd, 2024, for the
yeah.
school assignment policy, I just wrote still waiting to hear from Megan. So
Oh,
we may not actually have gotten her feedback on this draft.
huh. I could have sworn, but I don't know then if it came from Megan or if it's like somewhere on the site, the wording that they use, but
Hmm.
I don't think I created that wording.
Okay.
My notes in our shared document is that we had a discussion at Finance Subcommittee on June 26, 2024. So at least, Andy, that's later than January.
Okay,
And
so
so
that's
this
not the
may
latest.
reflect Megan's
Yeah.
comments.
Who is
Thank you.
Megan?
She's the registration and enrollment coordinator.
Oh, okay, thank you.
More sauce in a little bit. Um,
Hmm.
so I can go back and look at that. So then, the B one I had also flagged, right? This was a question of like basically promotion.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I just, again, that was a question in my mind. Um, and then the wording for 3, I think, was just standardizing the wording from an earlier section.
yeah.
Um, just little wording, like little minor updating of titles and whatnot. Um, do, do, do. Yeah, so I think that one also had a question because this was about um which grade sections you get access to, and it's not actually true that all classes and sections are open to all students. So that's what I was flagging. Because, for example, we don't have co-taught honors classes.
Right.
So that's something to work out. Then that is just minor grammar stuff. And then
Oh.
page 4, again, it's mostly just grammar stuff. And then we get into the class size and sectioning bit. And again, the goal of this was to,
Rather than traditionally, is there some other background we can put in the policy about, like between the years of
nope,
1995 and 2020 or something?
no, this like sprung from Zeus's head fully formed. No one knows.
No one.
That's more documentation than what we have actually.
Why don't we
You
just
could
say
say
that,
historically,
or just the district uses guidelines of, and that's
that's
it.
fine. Yeah, the district uses guidelines of less than
Yeah,
These guidelines are not a firm cap. That's fine. And then again, the idea was that people were confused about who made the decision to open up an additional section. And we
Yeah.
wanted to make it clear that this was not a school committee decision. This is this is an operational decision handled by the principal with the superintendent.
yeah,
Um,
Susan had said the same thing. Yeah, that's right.
right. And so, but that like a class size, it's maybe a class is, I'm making this up, but like it might only have 22 students in it, but the classroom itself can't support that. So there's a whole bunch of different things that they look at to balance class size and whether or not what's appropriate. And then there's one little sentence there now at the end about what happens when class size exceeds deadlines. And this is one that I think we did have debate about. We said the school committee supports the district leadership in identifying ways to ensure student learning is maximized. And we have including multi-grade classrooms. No, do not do that. And additional classroom supports, and you just need to be patient for a minute. I'm sorry. It's not. Can you just wait, please? Anyways, so the question was like, we don't offer a lot of multi-grade classrooms, or we don't offer any multi-grade classrooms, and we don't necessarily have the budget for broad scale additional classroom supports beyond what we do for like K paras and grade 1 paras. So the question is, do we want to include these things that we really have no history or funding for?
Do we even need that paragraph at all? I mean, why not just end with
We
bullet
don't
points?
necessarily.
Yeah.
We had talked
No,
about it at the committee. And so I really was just talking about, I was writing down some of the things we had verbalized, but we might not want to commit to them in a policy.
Yeah, I mean, I think the purpose, as I understand it, of adding this section is mainly for public education purposes, to make it clear that this is not a school committee decision, and to lay out some of the complexities that do have to feed into what the superintendent and the building leader decide, right? So I think that purpose is served if we just end it with the bullets.
Okay, I'm fine with that too.
All right, do folks think that this is ready to move at least to a first reading at school committee? Maybe if we check, we should double check that the changes in the earlier sections are actually just codifying current practice, which is thought to be appropriate, if that's true.
Well, I think this raises, like, it opens a can of worms, which is at the high school, co-taught classes are not available at the honors level.
Mhm.
And so it's probably a can of worms that should be opened, but you know, I think that we should probably maybe ask Bella to take that to Anthony and sort of like, this is the way it's written right now.
Mhm.
And what do you think about that? I don't think it's an issue at the elementaries. I think it's only an issue at the high school.
Yeah.
I would also suggest that your budgetary feasibility comment at the end might become the 6th bullet. And then when you take the paragraph out, that way we're adding a financial component to the not limited to section.
I personally would not include budget feasibility in there. I think that, like, to me, that's, first off, these are not exhaustive bullets.
Right.
But I do not think that budget feasibility, we should say we're going to run our classes up because we don't have funding for that personally.
Oh, well, no, the other direction that we'd like to, we realize that opening up another section may
Oh, I see what you're saying. Like, oh, everyone would like to be in classes of 12, but we're not going to do that because we don't have money for it.
Well, yes, Mariah, that's the far end of it.
Yeah.
You went farther than I did. Okay, I
Yeah,
wasn't
okay.
thinking that. I was just saying that, yes, that's true, but there is a financial component, just like teacher experience is a component. The potential budgetary implications are a guideline that a lot of people are going to think about. Like, if you have empty classrooms, if you have not, you have to have another section because, as you say, you have 22 kids or 20 kids, but your classroom's only big enough for 15. So you got to go to 2 of 11 each or something. So that's a budgetary thing because you got another room and you've got utilities and you got another teacher, blah, blah, blah. So I'm just suggesting that if this is, as Andy said, particularly designed for people to understand how we approach class size and sectioning, I think the financial part of it should be alluded to somehow. If it
I see
doesn't,
Bella's hand is up.
Yes.
I would just, so there's no class size guidelines for the high school, and you want me to ask Anthony about how that has worked for them?
No, the thing to check in with Anthony about are the implications of Betsy, are you scrolling up to that
Yes,
that thing
let me-
earlier?
Yes. This paragraph here.
That paragraph there. In particular, the marginal comment there is what's draws attention to the issue here.
It can be challenging. It can be challenging for us at the high school.
Can you repeat that? I didn't hear it.
That this can be challenging.
But this is current policy, so that's why we're
Mhm.
asking, like,
But I
given that
think
it's current
it's-
policy, how do we manage that?
I don't know that it's any different anywhere. It should be. It's just sometimes there isn't an agreement
What do
Right,
you
but
mean by
you're-
sometimes there isn't an agreement?
about what the appropriate placement is.
But I
Um,
think my issue is that it says all classes and sections are open to all students.
Yeah.
And
It's
that's not
necessarily
true.
it's not necessarily that there's a disagreement over placement. It's that a student who might wish to take an honors class or AP class and is qualified to do that cannot because, the co-teaching model doesn't exist for that class. And providing that could be, extremely costly.
Well, if someone is qualified for it and with support, they could do it. I think that's something that should happen. I don't know why if a student is qualified for it that they wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah, so
But that's what's
Val was
happening
here.
is students who have
Yeah.
co-taught classes on their IEPs are
Mhm.
excluded from taking those classes. So I think many of us agree with you, but that's not what's happening in practice.
Yeah, but it might be even with that support, they're not able to be successful. So there's other factors. But I would think
Val
like
has her hand up, but I don't think that that's what's going on here.
okay.
Val,
she's muted. There you go.
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to speak.
I think you are because we're sub quorum for the school committee as a whole, right? Or I don't know, Betsy, you're the
Yes.
Well, it wasn't.
you're the
There's
It
still
expert
was.
only
here.
4 of us here.
Yeah.
But is that okay, Betsy?
I
According
think
to
so,
our
'cause we're
rules,
not a
okay,
quorum.
yeah.
So I just wanted to add for sort of Bella's context when IEPs get developed between 8th and 9th grade. My understanding is that anybody who had a one-to-one para in K to 8 and was successful in any level of academics in K to 8 with a one-to-one, that seems to track automatically to co-taught classes. So I think that's the context with which this comes up, is that that seems to be the lane that gets assigned to kids who may have been performing quite well academically in the K to 8 setting, with heavy support. And that's just it. I don't know legally or the barriers, and there certainly would be financial, but I just wanted to give context for I think what happens at that transition from those meetings that happen in 8th grade.
So students are going to co-taught classes, and are you all suggesting that they would be able to access different classes if they were to continue to have their one-on-one?
I think at least what I have heard is that there are students who would be able to do honors work if they were in a co-taught environment with a special educator, but because there are not co-taught honors classes, they are essentially not able to access those classes.
Okay. Got it.
So it seems to be valuable to have, Anthony's input on, because this isn't something we're proposing to add to the policy. It's in the policy. And, anecdotally, we're not necessarily able to live up to this paragraph right now. And so just what his perspective is on the difficulties here.
Okay. Okay, I got it.
Yeah. So pending that, it seems to me that this is about ready to be looked at by the full school committee.
I agree.
Already been quite a bit of work and discussion on.
I
So
would like to go back and just refresh my memory or confirm with Susan and Megan that wording about the K1 transition is okay.
mhm.
I'll go look in my email and see, but if not, we can definitely check because I don't want it to go to policy to the committee without confirming. they're okay with that.
Okay. Do we want to take a vote now to not necessarily recommend the policy, but at least to bring it up for a first reading, pending what we learned from Anthony and Mariah, your checks.
So moved.
Second,
All right, Mariah,
Yes.
Jesse,
yes.
and I vote yes as well.
Can we do something similar with the other one, presuming Bella gets a thumbs up from the building directors?
You mean the Pledge of Allegiance one?
Yeah,
Do we feel ready for that one? I think that's all right.
I would move that again. Like if Bella's like, no, actually they had more substantive feedback, we could bring it back. But if they're like, yes, it's okay, then I would move it ahead for first reading.
Okay. Actually, before that, I just want to be clear on what we've just voted. So we did make a couple of changes in the last paragraph, right? So we agreed to remove that last everything after
Yes.
the bullet points, and then
Yes.
Jesse suggested adding another bullet about. Do we want to add a bullet about finances? And if so, how do we want to word that?
I thought it was something like budget. Jesse
Budget.
had wording, he said it out loud at that moment that I liked.
Budget constraints.
Yeah.
I think it was financial implications, but I mean, at the end of the day, I guess Betsy could go back to the recording to see what phrase I used exactly.
Okay, I'll do
Okay.
that.
Okay, so that's what we've just voted. Sure. Does anyone want to move the Pledge of Allegiance, at least for a first reading?
Yeah, I'll move it.
Okay. I'll second. Mariah,
Yes.
Jesse,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the policies that were on the agenda today. I do have a couple of items of new business, and anyone else who wants to raise new business can do that now as well. Basically, it's about like workflow and scheduling. So first thing is that the MOA that we reviewed in school committee recently with the town calls on the school committee to continue and complete our review of the fiscal section of the policy manual and to quote unquote document any changes. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but we're supposed to get it done by March 1st, by which I assume that means that we're supposed to have passed the policy or be on the brink of that and be able to say, like, here are the ways in which it differs from what was there before. So I think we need to definitely set up a timeline and a workflow for getting that done because that's a huge section. So Mariah, you've taken the lead on this in the
Yep.
past. So what are you thinking about the best way to proceed here? Also, how
It's
much
my
work should
plan to
finance be doing and how much work should policy be doing on this one?
It's my plan to bring the draft to Susan in the next couple of weeks. We can look at it and then it could go to a joint finance policy in maybe early December.
Early December.
Which
Okay.
the timing's rough because they're going to be full on into budget season at that point, but
Yeah.
it doesn't get better before March 1st. I would just highlight though that the MOA doesn't require us to have actually voted anything by March 1st. It just
Right.
requires us to document what we're up to. So still,
Document
I just
any
want to get this
changes.
done.
Yeah. I mean, if
So-
we can get it done, we may as well get it done
Yeah.
before that
But
deadline.
yes, my plan is to have it, maybe we could have do we have something for the December finance meeting? And if not, can we docket it? I'm sorry, the December policy meeting, and if not, can we docket it for that?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything specifically scheduled yet for December. So
Okay.
that would be a good meeting to put this in.
Okay.
Do you think we can dispose of it in one meeting? I mean, it's a monster.
I actually think we can probably get through a lot of it because the thing is that like the last time I did it, I gave more deference to the current policy, and with the years of wisdom, quote unquote, that I've gotten since then, I don't think I would do the same. And so I think I would adhere much more closely this time to the Mass School Committee policy. And so I think I would do that with some smaller tweaks. So I actually think that like we could probably get through it, at least as a first, like we could get through the whole thing. Now, if people want changes or additions to be made, we'd probably have to come back, but like we can get through the whole thing in one sitting.
Okay. But we should clear the decks for that meeting and not have
I
any.
think so, yeah,
Okay.
based on what happened last time.
Yeah.
And I think too that like what would be really helpful for me is if I don't know if we can do this with OML, but this is what I would like, is if the two of you were willing to look at the finance policy and tell me what you thought was good policy and what wasn't, or just tell me what you like and care about, like what you think is good policy.
Well, if we work independently on it, Andy and I, and then send you input, that's not an OML issue, right?
Well, I think because you're sending it to me, but like, I think we just need to do a little bit of offline.
Oh, I see.
So I guess I'm just gonna ask you if you can do that, and then I won't share your results with each other, but I would appreciate that kind of input of what parts of the current finance policy you think are really valuable.
And so like, should we be looking at but when you talk about the current one, do you mean the current draft?
No, I mean Brookline Section D as it exists now,
Oh,
because
okay, so you're
basically
planning to
I'm
go all
not
the way.
gonna, I'm gonna only take the like merest, like the minimum from our current Section D, remembering that like a lot of that policy is 40 years old, and so it predates the education reform of 1993 or 4, whenever that was. So,
So should I even bother going back and trying to look at sort of the last stage that the
no,
draft reached
don't bother,
before
because my
Sanders and
mind's in a
left?
different place now. And I just want to know if there's anything that you're like, wow, this is so great. I love this. That's all I want to know.
In the current one that we'll get from the current policy manual.
Correct. The current Brookline policy manual.
Yeah, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
How soon do you need that input?
In the next week would be helpful because I'm starting to like pick through it all now and put it all together.
Okay.
All right. Okay, great. So thank you. We have a timeline and workflow for that. So I just wanted.
Betsy, just so I know, will you, is it possible for you to just flag that policy meeting to Susan, whatever that date is?
Oh, the December meeting, that is?
Yeah,
Yes, of course, yep.
thank you.
All right, so then we should figure out what we're doing at our next meeting. So something we do have to take up is the competency determination. So that meeting will actually be a joint one with curriculum, so we can get it through both subcommittees in one sitting. Robin Benoit thinks that it shouldn't take more than 30 minutes to discuss that, and so we do have time to take up a couple of other items in November. I think the two policies that we had noted for November were the civil rights policy and instructional materials. So if it's all right with the other members, maybe we can plan to spend 30 minutes on competency determination, 45 on civil rights, and 45 on instructional materials. And Jesse, you're taking the lead on that one, which is partly about integrating the MASC model policy with ours, right?
Wait, you're
Which
spending,
one?
we have a 2-hour meeting?
No, oh, did I? Yeah, sorry, I didn't, I screwed up. I meant 30, 30. Just so we touch on all of them, we may not get through everything, but.
So
Okay.
just so I'm clear then, instructional materials is the one you're talking about having me look to the model in the MASC one for Brookline. Is that what you're saying?
Right. I mean, I think you may have been the one who raised it at our
I
first
did.
meeting as that was something that we needed to take a look at.
Well, it came up at the resolution at the May 1st meeting of last year, this year, May 1st, 2025 meeting. That's when the instructional materials thing came up.
Yeah.
And yeah, okay. And then the civil rights one was one I had given you. I handed you the work that I had done. So is that's on your plate still, right?
Right. So that's on my plate to kind of coordinate the various drafts that we've gone through and figure out what we can move forward.
Right. So that I believe is that there's some requirement out there that we get that done, right? In other words, it's different than like even finance. If finance we don't do for, I mean, okay, the MOU is pushing us to do it, but even if there was none, finance could sit. But I think the civil rights one, there's some, Rebecca had said that there was some mandate or regulation, and we're supposed to have it done.
Yes, it's not like a strict deadline, but it is something that we definitely should get done as soon as we can.
All right, so I'll look at, so I'll just make a note here. I'll look at the instructional materials one. Okay, I think we don't have one. If I recall, section I or something. I don't believe we have one. There's some stuff embedded in. I'd have to look it up right now. There's something embedded in our policy about curriculum or something. I don't know. I'll go, it's back from May, so I really haven't paid much attention, but okay, now, thank you for reminding me about that one, and I will follow up on that one while I'm also gonna do that finance one review that Mariah asked us to do.
Okay, any other new business?
Yes,
Hi, Bella, go ahead.
sorry. We do request maybe you would take up the code of conduct policy for possible revision. I thought in talking with Karen, maybe we would provide some draft language for it. We don't have any prepared at this time.
Okay, yeah, that's something that had come up last year, and we couldn't get a handle on it because it wasn't even clear. Like it wasn't even clear what kind of policy it was, right? And where we could get some purchase, and what needed revision. So if staff in working with it have clearer notions about what should change, that would be really helpful. Because yeah,
All right, thank you.
we sort of talked around it last time without ever really coming to grips with it substantively.
Okay, so we're just in practice, we think maybe it would be helpful to have some revision, so I just wanted to put it on your radar.
Okay.
And is that that's for teachers and staff?
For
Alright.
students, the code of conduct for students.
I definitely have some things that I'm interested about the code of conduct.
Code of conduct for students, okay,
It's J,
in J, okay, yeah, that's what I thought.
page 59. And on.
I'm sorry, J what?
It starts on page 59
Oh,
through,
page 15. Oh, yeah, I would
Yeah,
know. I was in a different policy manual.
okay.
So that's code of conduct for students. How does this interrelate with the handbook, student handbook?
I'm sure there's a reference to it in the handbook.
Yes, the
It's really
student
just-
handbook references it. It does not duplicate it.
Right, I remember, Mariah, we had this discussion last year about that, yeah. Okay, student code. So this is student code of conduct.
Yes.
Student code of conduct. So this includes what? Things like what, like late night activities, travel, hazing, bullying? I mean, what dress code? I mean, is it everything? I mean, I
In
guess.
particular, we're interested in the section on suspension.
Oh, okay, that's what okay, good to know what.
Okay.
we're doing. Thank you for the clarification. Okay.
So
So-
another policy that we'd heard from some principals that it would be useful to take up was attendance. And that also sort of didn't move forward last year, but I think some of the principals at least were saying that it'd be useful. Yeah, basically it'd be useful if they had more tools at their disposal, including loss of academic credit for missing too much school. And so that that didn't move forward last year, not because there was opposition, but because we got overwhelmed with other things to do.
Yeah.
But if that's still something that building leaders want us to take up, then I think we probably will have time for that as well.
I think, yes, I've heard it brought up.
Mm-hmm.
Whether staff have leadership to work on it might be the question, but I would definitely put it on the list.
The change might be as simple as, just adding like a phrase saying that that the consequences could include loss of academic credit. So if it's something like that, then it wouldn't necessarily take up much staff time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just
Is
gonna
it,
add it.
so Bella, is this you're looking at like an upgrade of the current student discipline, like JIC? Is that what we're referring to? Like to review the current suspension policy, rules and notices and removals and stuff? Is that what?
I think it's just some editing to it.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, I made a note.
Mariah has her hand up. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to
can-
cut you off, Jesse.
No
Can you-
problem.
Can you remind me, is the, oh my gosh, I'm losing my words at this moment. The use of isolation rooms in code of conduct as well, or is that elsewhere?
I'd have to look at it.
Okay, because I think, or I thought that the state had just, or is about to update guidance on use of isolation rooms too, so it might be good to check on where that's at, and there's also some thoughts I have on that one too, if it's not in code of conduct.
I doubt it would be in code of conduct. But
It might
I
be
mean,
somewhere else in that section, Jay, though, I guess. Maybe I'm getting them
yeah,
blurred
I mean,
together.
I'm scanning the topics and it's not
Yeah,
obvious to me.
I don't recall seeing it anywhere.
Yeah, Bella, just for some context, at least my reading of why we had such trouble coming to grips with the code of conduct was it wasn't quite clear what kind of policy it is, right? Like there are at least three main aspects to it. One of them is it lists like desired norms of behavior, okay? And then number two, it also has procedures and protocols for how we respond to instances of misbehavior. And then number three, it spells out consequences for some of this stuff, right? So that's all in what we call the code of conduct, but some of it is really about how the schools respond to, you know, possible violations. And some of it is, yes, like here's how you should act. And then some of it is, yes, here's consequences for misbehavior. So it's all it's all there in one big heap, and it's kind of hard to get our hands around it.
Yeah,
Okay.
in our last discussion about isolation, though, Andy, it was not related at all to punishment or discipline. It was related, I think, when I had a discussion with Lisa about the Driscoll, it was about students who needed time outside the classroom because of particular challenges they had.
Mhm.
It wasn't code of conduct.
Yeah, so Betsy seems to be highlighting physical restraint in our
Okay.
manual. Yeah.
Where's that, an E?
E, yeah, in support services section.
Really?
Number 5.
That doesn't seem to be the right place. So.
Or
Well, I
E5.
think
Oh,
it
there,
would be
B, yeah,
helpful,
page five,
to
yeah.
just check with Karen on whether the state has, or maybe Val, do you know, has the state done the update on the isolation room use yet?
I thought they did that already.
That's what I thought too, but I
Yeah,
don't think
I thought-
it's gotten reflected in our policy, so.
The last update was 2022, so doesn't
Yeah.
sound like it.
Okay, so yeah, if staff can give us pointers about like what specifically in the vast code of conduct you'd like us to look at.
I think actually we were looking at a more discrete portion of
yeah,
it.
that'd be great.
And now
Right.
I feel like I opened Pandora's box.
Yeah, I'm happy if we don't revisit the thing as a whole because that was
Well, we
Okay.
could just, you said the key word you mentioned, Bella, was suspension, right? So if we focus on that, I think that could,
Parameters for suspension.
Mhm.
yeah, and there is a,
May not be comprehensive enough.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, good. 'Cause,
All
yeah,
right.
I didn't mean to open the whole thing.
All right, so I think we can end only 4 minutes behind schedule. So thank you all for your work. Thank you, Bella, for being here.
Our next
Betsy,
meeting
for
is
running the meeting.
scheduled, and our next meeting is scheduled for when, Andy?
I think it's now it's going to be November 18th. That was our original meeting date for November, and it's now going to be partly a joint meeting with curriculum.
So the first half hour probably will be joint with curriculum where you take up the competency determination, but then curriculum will leave and we still have time for policy
Right,
to
that's-
take up the 2 other
that's-
items.
5, right? 5 on the 18th, which is just before town meeting starts, so we'll be done on 6:30. That's fine. Thank you.
All right.
Yep, it's good timing.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.